The wind was cold on the edge of the human colony. Soft dust blew across the camp, and the night sky above the alien planet was deep purple, filled with unfamiliar stars. Luke, a young human engineer, had just finished his long shift fixing solar panels. His hands were sore and his back ached. All he wanted was to eat something and fall asleep inside his warm tent. But as he walked past the last row of supply crates, something made him stop. Someone was sitting alone near the last fire, pit barely in the light, not talking, moving much, just sitting with arms wrapped around her knees, staring at the ground. She wasn't human. Her skin had a soft silvery blue glow, and small star-shaped markings ran along the sides of her face. Her clothes were dusty and torn. She wore no gloves, no boots. Her fingers were shaking from the cold. She didn't belong to the colony. Luke looked around. The other workers were laughing near the main fire. No one paid attention to her. A few had noticed her earlier in the day and called her a stray, some alien wanderer who'd shown up after last week's shuttle drop. She didn't speak English. Her translator was broken, since she wasn't causing trouble. No one cared, except Luke. He walked slowly toward her as he got closer. He saw she had no tent, no sleeping bag, not even a blanket. She was sitting in the dirt beside a worn-out crate, a piece of old cloth pulled over her shoulders. Like a shield, he stopped a few steps away and crouched. "You look cold," he said quietly. She looked up, startled. Her eyes were large and light green, glowing slightly in the dark. For a second, she looked like she might run. Luke raised his hands slowly. "It's okay. I won't hurt you." She tilted her head. She didn't speak, but she didn't move either. Luke looked at the cloth over her shoulders. It was too thin, barely enough for the wind, pointed toward the line of human tents behind him. "I have space," he said. "You can crash there tonight just till you find something better." She didn't respond. He stood and took a step back, leaving her the choice. She stared at him for a long time, as if deciding whether he was real. Then, slowly she stood. She was tall, but very thin, not from nature, but from hunger. Her movements were slow, careful, and when she walked, her bare feet left prints in the cold sand. Luke led the way. No one stopped them. No one asked questions. Inside his tent, he cleared the floor mat and offered her a folded heat blanket. She sat cross-legged, looking around, carefully, touching things with her fingertips, the fabric of the walls, the zipper on the sleeping bag, the blinking power light near the corner. She didn't seem scared, just unsure. Luke opened a ration pack and handed her a protein bar. She sniffed it, tapped it twice, then took a slow bite. Her eyes widened, as if she hadn't eaten something sweet in a long time. He smiled. "You like that?" She nodded. Once, then silence returned. Luke sat across from her, leaning against a crate. He didn't want to scare her with too many questions, so he simply waited. She unwrapped the blanket and pulled it around her shoulders. Her hands were still shaking slightly, but she was no longer cold. After a while, she reached into the torn pouch at her side and pulled out a small metal device, her translator. It was cracked, half melted from heat damage. She held it out. To him, Luke looked at her. "You want me to fix it?" She gave a small nod. He took it gently and placed it on the crate. "I'll try." The stars outside shifted as the planet turned. The temperature dropped again, but inside the tent, it was warm and quiet. The alien girl curled up in the corner, using the blanket as a cocoon. Her eyes slowly closed. Luke sat beside her, watching the flickering light of the tiny heater. She didn't say a word all night, but somehow, he understood. She wasn't just alone. She had no home, no help, and no one left, until now. And while Luke didn't know who she was, or why she'd ended up on this forgotten world, he had a strange feeling. Tonight wasn't going to be normal. Tomorrow, nothing would be the same. The night was still outside the tent. Faint wind whispered through the fabric, and distant machines hummed somewhere in the colony. Luke woke suddenly. his back stiff from sleeping on the hard mat. For a moment, he forgot where he was. Then he saw her, the alien girl, curled in the corner. Awake. She wasn't sleeping. She hadn't slept at all. Her eyes were open, glowing faintly in the dark. Her arms were wrapped tight around her knees and her body was very still, too still. Luke sat up slowly. "You okay?" She looked at him, blinked once, and turned her head away. He reached for the heater and turned it up slightly. The soft orange light filled the small tent. Warmth spread across the floor, but the girl didn't move. Luke sighed. "You know, you don't have to sit like that, right? Can stretch out." She didn't answer. Just stared at the tent wall. He looked around awkwardly, then pulled out the translator device she had given him the night before. The casing was cracked. A wire was burned. The chip inside was still glowing, still alive. "I think I can fix this," he said gently. "Not now, but soon." She turned her head slowly to watch him, but said nothing. He wished he could ask her questions. "What's your name? Where are you from? You hurt? Are you running?" Instead, he did something simple. He picked up a small metal tool from the corner, turned it over, and handed it to her. "Tool," he said. She looked at it. "Tool," he repeated, tapping it twice. She blinked, then took it slowly from his hand. Her voice came out soft, unsure. "Tool," Luke smiled. "Close enough." She turned the tool in her hand, studying it like it was a new life form. Then, with one finger, she dragged it across the floor. Leaving a small line in the dust, she looked at Luke again. Then she began to draw. Curved lines, dots, symbols, almost like a map, or maybe a memory. He watched her hands move, slow, but focused. After a few minutes, she stopped. The pattern on the floor looked like a planet with rings and broken stars. Luke stared at it. "What is that?" She tapped one part of the drawing, a circle with a crack through it. Then she pointed at herself. Her mouth moved. No sound. Then she pointed to the floor, to a small mark far from the cracked planet, and drew a symbol beside it. A tent. Luke stared. "You came from there? That planet?" She looked at him, nodded, then slowly lowered her head. Her shoulders shook once. A quiet exhale escaped her lips. She wasn't just drawing, she was remembering. Luke's voice softened. "You lost. You're home." She said nothing. But she didn't need to. Silence filled the tent, but not the bad kind. The kind that meant something was being shared. Even without words, Luke moved to his crate and pulled out a second protein bar. He handed it to her. She hesitated. "Eat," he said. She took it and bit off a small piece, chewed, then nodded once like it was acceptable. He laughed quietly. "You've got taste." Her eyes met his again, this time longer. Then she reached into her pouch again and pulled out a small black string. Attached to it was a tiny crystal, dull and scratched, but beautiful in a quiet way. She held it out. To him, Luke took it carefully. "For me?" She nodded. He examined it. "What does it mean?" She pressed her hand to her chest, then touched the crystal. Then gently touched his shoulder. He understood trust. He handed it back, but she pushed it toward him again and closed his fingers around it. Luke kept it. They sat in silence again, both staring at the dim heater light. The wind outside had stopped. Then a low sound rumbled far in the distance. Thunder. It was soft, far away. But the girl's body tensed instantly. She curled tighter into the blanket. Her breathing quickened. Luke's voice was calm. "It's just weather." She looked at him, shaking her head. She wasn't afraid of thunder. She was remembering what came with it. Fire, screams, noise, maybe bombs. Maybe worse. Luke moved slowly and placed the heater closer to her side. He didn't say anything more. Eventually, she fell into a light sleep. Not deep, but quieter than before. And as Luke watched her sleep, he realized something strange. She hadn't spoken more than one word. She hadn't told him anything important, yet somehow, she had already changed. Everything. The next morning came quietly. The purple sky of the alien world slowly turned golden. The colony was still asleep, except for a few early workers getting ready for the power cycle. Outside, the hum of machines slowly returned. Inside the tent, Luke opened his eyes to soft light and silence. He looked toward the corner, empty. The alien girl was gone. He sat up quickly, rubbing his eyes. The blanket she had used was still folded neatly. The heater was off, her translator in pouch. Gonta Luke stood and rushed outside. The cold morning air hit his face as he looked around the camp. No one seemed alarmed. No one even noticed. He moved past the tents, past the crates, toward the outer edge of the colony, and that's when he saw her, sitting at the edge of a cliff, just beyond the supply zone, her legs hanging off the side. The wind played with her white-silver hair as she stared out at the vast sky. A sky filled with broken moons and faraway stars. Luke walked carefully across the rocky path. "Hey," he said softly, "you disappeared." She turned slightly, not startled. Not afraid, she simply pointed up at the sky. Luke sat down beside her. "What's up there?" She didn't answer. He followed her finger and saw nothing, just stars, clouds, and drifting pieces of a shattered ring system. Then she spoke. "My home was there." Luke blinked. Was she nodded?
I no longer.
For a long moment, neither of them said anything. Then she reached into her pouch and pulled out her damaged translator. Luke took it to him again. Luke took it. "You sure?" She nodded. He examined the burnt side carefully, then took out a small repair kit from his tool belt. He worked in silence while she sat beside him, staring at the sky, as if she might see something move out there, something that once belonged to her. Finally, after about 15 minutes of careful wiring, the device blinked to life. She stared at it. Her hand trembled slightly. Luke handed it back. "Try it." She held the device close to her throat. A soft tone beeped. Then she said, "Test. This work now?" The voice that came from the translator wasn't hers. It was robotic, flat, but the words were clear. Luke smiled. "It works." She looked down, quiet. Luke leaned forward. "Can I ask your name now?" She nodded once. Then she said, "Siva." He repeated it softly. "Siva." She seemed to relax at the sound of it. "Why did you come here?" Luke asked. Siva didn't answer right away. Her eyes went back to the sky. "My transport was not meant to land," she said slowly. "It was meant to pass, but I left. I ran. I took a pod." Luke frowned. "Why?" She looked down at her hands, folding them tightly in her lap. "Because I did not belong. Not to them, not to the others. I was made for things I did not choose." Luke tilted his head. "You escaped?" "Yes, from what?" Siva was silent again. Then she looked at him and said four simple words. "They called me broken." Luke felt something shift in his chest. He didn't know who they were, didn't know where she was from, or what she had been through, but he knew what it meant to feel broken. "Maybe being broken is better," he said. "Means you didn't become like them." She looked at him for a long time. Her eyes softened. She reached into her pouch again, pulled out a tiny piece of silver metal. It shimmered like glass, flat and delicate. "What is it?" Luke asked. She handed it to him. "It's a memory. Mine. I cannot open it anymore. But maybe you can." Luke turned the chip over in his fingers. "Why give it to me? Because you saw me." That sentence hit deeper than he expected. Then, without another word, she stood and began to walk back toward the tents. Luke stood too, watching her in silence. He looked back up at the sky. Something about Siva, her calm voice, her strange sadness, her presence felt bigger than this colony. Bigger than him, and suddenly he understood. She wasn't just from another world. She wasn't just lost. She wasn't from here at all. The wind changed that evening. It came faster. Sharper, not like the usual night breeze over the colony camp. This one carried something colder, something watching. Inside his tent, Luke worked quietly with a flashlight. The memory chip Siva had given him sat on his makeshift scanner, slowly uploading encrypted fragments, strange shapes, alien writing, and flickering images passed across the small screen. None of it made sense. But one thing was clear. Whatever this was, it wasn't just a memory. It was a record. Someone didn't want it to exist. Outside, most of the humans were asleep. A few guards roamed the outpost walls. Even the patrol drones floated in quiet. Regular loops. Siva sat cross-legged by the tent entrance, her back straight, eyes closed. She hadn't spoken since the cliff. She didn't have to. Luke looked at her. "You okay?" She opened her eyes slowly. "No." Luke paused. "Is it the chip?" "No," she said. "It's coming." Luke frowned. "What is?" She turned her head toward the edge of the desert. "The thing that followed me? I thought I lost it. I didn't." Luke stood and stepped out of the tent. The wind had picked up. Dust floated in the air like fine powder. In the far distance, near the dark line of the rocks, a figure stood completely still. Too far to see clearly, but it was watching. Siva rose to her feet. Her voice was calm, but her hands trembled. "It's here for me." The figure moved closer, step by step, without sound. Luke grabbed his light scope and zoomed in. What he saw made his stomach twist. It wasn't a man. It wasn't like Siva either. Tall, thin, armor that shimmered like liquid steel. A helmet with no face, just a single red slit that blinked slowly. Siva spoke in a low whisper. "It's a collector, not alive. Not dead. Programmed to retrieve. Or erase." Luke whispered back, "You mean it's a hunter?" "Yes." He looked at her. "Can it speak?" "No, but it remembers faces. It doesn't forget targets." Luke glanced at his rifle. "Can we stop it?" "No," Siva said, eyes locked on the approaching figure. "But maybe we can run?" They moved quickly. Luke stuffed the memory chip into a small capsule and tied it to his belt. He packed his toolkit, his portable heat cell, and his scanner. No time for anything else. Siva stayed silent as they ducked under supply crates, keeping to the shadows, moving away from the firelight of the colony. No one noticed, no alarms. The hunter didn't make noise. It didn't need to. It always found its target. They reached the back side of the colony wall. They're hidden behind the fuel tanks. It was a narrow hatch, an old maintenance tunnel from when the colony was still under construction. Luke pried it open. Inside. "Quick." Siva paused. "Are you sure?" "No," he said. "But better than standing out here." She slipped into the darkness. Luke followed and sealed the hatch behind them. Inside, the tunnel was tight and dusty. Old wires ran along the walls. The ground sloped downward, deeper into the earth. Their only light was a flickering beam from Luke's torch. "What does it want?" he asked. Siva walked slowly ahead. "The chip, my memories, my voice. Because of what's on it." She nodded. "I escaped with information about the lab, about what they did to my kind. The hybrids, the ones like me, was created for silence." Luke didn't understand all of it, but he understood one thing. Siva wasn't supposed to survive, which meant neither was the truth. Suddenly, a loud clang echoed from behind. Luke turned sharply. It's in the tunnel. Siva didn't panic. It moves slow. It scans. It watches. Luke checked his rifle. "Well, I don't scan, I shoot." She looked at him, calm but serious. "If you fire, it will find us faster." He lowered the weapon. They moved deeper, until the tunnel opened into an old power cellar full of broken machines, rusted panels, and a sealed air duct at the far end. Siva pointed. "That leads to the forest. We can get out." Luke moved toward it, but the sound of metal footsteps froze him in place. The hunter dropped into the room behind them, silent. Still, its red slit blinked once. Then again, then it charged. Luke fired. The shot hit its chest. Sparks flew, but the thing didn't stop. Siva grabbed a broken power cell and slammed it into the floor. It hissed, overloading. She threw it. Boom. A flash of light. Smoke. Luke pulled her toward the vent and kicked it open. They crawled fast, dust choking them, metal scraping their hands until they burst out into the cold night air beyond the edge of the colony. They rolled down a slope, breathless. Behind them, smoke rose from the tunnel, but the red light still blinked through the haze. Siva looked at Luke. Her voice shook this time. It will not stop. Not until the memory dies. Luke clenched his fists. Then we better make sure that memory survives. The stars above the forest were hidden behind thick clouds. The world felt darker here, older. Cold wind passed through the trees like a whisper, too quiet to catch. Luke and Siva moved through the undergrowth. Each step careful, each sound. A possible threat. They hadn't spoken since escaping the tunnel. Luke's clothes were covered in ash. His arm was cut from crawling through the vent. Siva limped slightly, holding her side, but her face remained calm, even focused. Behind them, no red light followed. Ah! But they both knew. It wasn't over. They stopped near a dead tree where a small rock shelf gave them cover. Luke dropped to one knee, opened his belt pouch, and pulled out the memory chip. It's still intact, he said, checking the scanner. Siva knelt beside him. That chip is not just mine. Luke looked at her. What do you mean? She turned the chip in his hand. It holds 3 memories. One is mine, one is from another like me, and the third. She paused. Luke asked, whose is it? Looked up human. His face changed. That's not possible, she said. Your people were part of the lab. They helped create us. Luke stared at her. Siva, I thought they were your enemies. They are, she replied. Quietly, but part of them also funded our creation. Secret projects. Silent approvals. No records. Luke leaned back, heart racing. You're saying someone on Earth helped build you, and now they want you dead? She nodded, because if this comes out, the war changes. Luke shook his head. I'm just an engineer, not trained for this. I don't know what to do with something that could tear the system apart. Siva looked at him. Her voice was softer now. You already did more than anyone. You gave me your tent, your food, your silence. That saved me. Luke looked down at the chip in his palm, small, cold, quiet. And somehow, heavier than any weapon he'd ever seen. What do we do with it? Siva's voice changed. Sounded sure now, unshaken. We send it. Send it where? To both sides? To everyone? No filter? No delay? If both humans and aliens see it at the same time, no one can hide it again. Luke rubbed his face. That means running forever. Yes, Siva said. He looked at her. Then let's start running. They moved again through the forest, deeper now, to a place Luke remembered from old mapping files, a crashed relay station, long abandoned. It once sent messages across colonies, but the system was damaged during early settlement. If they could repair it even briefly, they could send the chip to a dozen fringe outposts. The path was hard. The forest was dense. But Siva moved with purpose, and finally they found it half buried in rock and moss, a tower leaning sideways. The cracked satellite dish still pointed toward the sky. Luke smiled. Not pretty, but she might still work. They entered the lower level through a side breach. Inside, it was cold, dark, full of vines and dust. Siva powered on her wrist torch, lit the room. Luke stepped toward the central panel. These cables are old, but not dead. He connected his toolkit. Siva placed the chip gently into the main drive. The system word lights blinked. Soft hum returned. It's working, Luke said, surprised. Start the transfer, Siva said. He paused. Are you ready? No, she whispered. But I won't be tomorrow either. As the data began to upload, Luke watched strange images flash across the old screen. Hybrid children in testing chambers. Alien DNA next to human neural maps. Silent scientists watching and files marked Earth classified level. Black then, her memory began to play. A younger Siva. Waking up inside a glass room, scared and alone. Her first words were not in her language, but in a human one. Trained, shaped, observed, then thrown away. Luke turned away, unable to watch. More. The transfer bar ticked upward. 62%, 73%, 91%. ... Suddenly, the signal froze. Something blocked it. Luke checked the scanner. Interference? Siva stared at the door. No, it's here. The red light returned. At the far end of the hallway, the hunter stood. No sound. No speech. Just presence. Luke raised his weapon. Siva stepped forward. She whispered something into her wrist device, then turned to Luke. Take the chip. What are you doing? I'll hold it back. No, she touched his chest. Gently. You're the only one who trusted me without knowing anything. Don't waste that. Before he could stop her, she stepped into the hallway and ran at the hunter. Screaming words in her own language, Luke grabbed the chip in the toolkit, turned and ran. Behind him, a burst of light shook the tower, but the chip glowed brighter in his hand, and the upload continued. Smoke poured out of the broken relay tower. The structure groaned as beams collapsed, and sparks lit up the dark sky like lightning trapped in a cage. The sound of energy pulsing echoed across the forest. Luke ran through the trees, holding the memory chip close to his chest, his breath sharp and fast. Every few steps, he glanced back, but saw no red light, no hunter, no Siva, only fire. He stopped near a fallen tree, crouched low, and pressed the emergency beacon on his belt. It blinked once, then failed. Too much interference. His hands trembled. Not from fear, from the weight of what just happened. He looked at the chip, small, silver, glowing with a low hum. The upload had reached 97% before the blast. Almost done. Almost. Enough to change everything, but not without her, Siva whispered. His thoughts raced. What if she was gone? What if she had sacrificed herself to give him time? What if that was her only plan all along? But then a sound. Crunch. Footsteps on dry leaves. He raised his rifle, heart pounding. Out of the smoke, a shape appeared, tall, limping, covered in ash. It was her. Siva stumbled into view. Part of her shoulder armor melted, one side of her face cut open, but her eyes were sharp, alive. Luke dropped his weapon and ran to her. You're... She fell into his arms before he could finish. I delayed it, she whispered. It's not dead, but we are ahead now. He held her tighter, heart pounding. We need to move. They walked for an hour, slowly, through the forest until they reached the edge of a canyon. Down below was a human outpost. Not military, not official. A smuggler camp. Luke looked through binoculars. Old ships, tech runners, traders, outlaws. No flags, no rules. They don't ask questions, he said. We can hide there. Siva leaned against him, or we can send the final message. There's always a price. He looked at her. We already paid. She shook her head. Not yet. Inside the smuggler camp, lights flickered through thick smoke. People moved like shadows, human and alien alike. No one cared who you were, only what you brought. Luke and Siva entered quietly, keeping their faces low. They found a back room under a broken satellite dish. Inside was a hacked comms array still functioning. Luke plugged in the chip. Siva leaned on the wall, her knees shaking. He turned to her. Once this goes out, we won't just be hunted, we'll be marked. She gave a soft laugh, tired, cracked. We already are. Luke started the sequence. The final 3% uploaded. The screen blinked green dot complete. He hit transmit. A wave of data shot into space, reaching old stations, hidden archives, even personal terminals across the border worlds. Inside that data, her truth, his choice, their story. Nothing would be the same. Siva slid down the wall, eyes closed. We should leave now. Luke nodded. But before they could exit, the room a voice echoed from behind. Well, you two made quite the mess. Turned. A tall man stepped forward, black jacket, metal implants in his jaw. His crew blocked the only way out. They weren't soldiers, but they looked like they'd been paid well. Luke tensed. "What do you want?" the man smirked. "You think only governments want the truth? You just started a war. And we have buyers who pay to keep things quiet." He reached for his weapon. Luke stepped in front of Siva. She whispered, "You don't have to protect me." He answered without looking back, "I'm not protecting you. I'm standing with you." Then he reached into his coat, threw a flash charge to the ground. Boom. Smoke filled the room. They ran. Shots rang out. Sparks flew. One bullet grazed Luke's side. He bit down and kept moving. They made it to the landing deck. Small cargo ship was prepping for takeoff. Pilot already on board, door still open. Luke shouted, "We're coming in." The pilot didn't argue. "Strap in or stay behind." The ship lifted just as the smugglers reached the deck. Bullets hit the hull, but it was too late. They were airborne. Inside, Luke collapsed against the wall, bleeding. Siva crawled beside him. She reached into her pouch and pulled out a cloth, pressing it to his side. "You're hurt," she said. He smiled weakly. "You noticed?" She looked at him, eyes shining, and said something she had never said before, not through her translator. In her own voice? Her own tongue. He didn't understand the words, but the way she looked at him, understood everything. High above the world they left behind, the message spread. Screens blinked. Data spread like wildfire, and across galaxies, people saw the truth. Some believed, some denied, but none could unsee it. And somewhere, deep in the stars, a human and an alien sat in silence, no longer running, but choosing where to go next. Asterisk. The ship drifted through a quiet part of space far from military patrols, away from colony routes, deep in the black between stars. Inside, soft engine hum filled the silence. Luke lay on a narrow bunk, bandaged and pale, wound on his side. Throbbed, but it wasn't what kept him awake. He stared at the ceiling, thinking not of pain but of everything that had happened. A girl with no tent, a broken translator. A quiet night that became something much bigger. Now he was no longer just an engineer. He was a traitor to his own system. And strangely, he didn't regret it. Across the room, Siva sat at the small ship window, her legs pulled close to her chest, her chin resting on her knees. She had changed too. The fear in her eyes had softened into something calm. It's not safety, but strength. Message had gone out. The truth was no longer trapped in her memory, but the question still burned. Now what? She turned her head. "You should be resting." Luke smiled faintly. "You should be sleeping." She shrugged. "Still doesn't feel safe." He pushed himself up slowly, wincing. It might never feel safe again. She looked at him. "Do you regret it?" He didn't answer right away, then said, "No. I regret not asking what this war was really." About years ago, Siva nodded. "My kind were taught never to ask. Just follow, just obey." And now, she gave a tiny smile. "Now I choose." The ship's autopilot beeped. Luke checked the console, approaching the drop zone. Outside the window, a glowing planet appeared. Small, half covered in forest, half in ocean. A dead world, forgotten by most systems, but habitable, hidden. "We'll be ghosts out here," he said. Siva stood. Good ghosts don't get hunted. He landed quietly between mountains and trees. The ship powered down. No trackers. No coms. They stepped outside into clean air. The night sky stretched wide above them, filled with stars that didn't have names. A soft wind moved the tall grass. Siva looked around. "This planet has no name." Luke nodded. "Then maybe we give it one." She smiled again. "You first." He thought for a moment, then said, "Home." Days passed. They built a small shelter out of crash panels and local stone. Luke repaired old tech. Siva grew plants that responded to touch. They ate simple food, cleaned water from the stream, laughed when a six-legged bird chased Luke out of the tent. No war, no orders. Just time. One night, Luke sat beside the fire, staring at the flickering flame. Siva sat across from him, quietly carving something into a piece of wood. He asked, "Do you ever miss it?" She raised an eyebrow. "Your world," he said. It all fell apart. She didn't answer for a long time, then whispered, "I don't miss the world. I miss the idea of it, what it could have been." He nodded slowly. "That's fair." Then she handed him the carved wood. It was a simple design, a tent, a star, and two figures sitting beside a small fire. Luke stared at it. "This is—" "Night I arrived," she said. "The night you saw me." Looked up, it was just a blanket and a protein bar. "No," she said. "It was the first time someone looked at me and didn't see a tool, or a threat." She leaned forward. "You didn't know what I was. You just knew I was cold." Luke ran his fingers over the carving. "It was a strange night." "The strangest," she replied. They sat in silence. Then she said, something she'd never said before, something raw and human, in a voice not translated. "Thank you. For choosing me?" Luke looked at her, eyes wet. "You chose me first." Far away in spaceports and military halls, the message they had sent continued to ripple. Some called it fake. Others called it rebellion. But some, the quiet ones, saved it, shared it, believed it. A captain on a warship erased an old targeting file. A border patrol let a strange ship pass without scanning. A scientist whispered to her students, "There's another version of the story." And somewhere, deep in a place no radar could find, two people who should have never met sat quietly under strange stars, no longer running, no longer fighting, just being asterisk.